Have you ever felt hopeless or that your life was beyond your control? Have you had to deal with emotions surrounding those feelings and wondered if things would ever be different? Do you want to know how to overcome traumas in your life that sometimes can feel overwhelming? And also to realize who and what you were created to become. My guest today, Kimberly Bell, is going to answer these questions and share her story that I know you will love to hear. Will be encouraging for you and also motivating. So stay tuned.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
So let's start from the beginning. Some of the things that you have endured are in various areas of abuse: physical, mental, emotional, and sexual. So tell us your story.
So you're absolutely right. There was physical abuse where, um, from a very small age, from all I remember was a disconnection from love from my biological mother, where she was just very rough with me, very not polite, not
Oh,
pleasant. There were just a very different embrace or touch than my biological sister, whom was there with me up until 5, and she's 2 years older than me, and my biological father. So I experienced that with the physical, and I just never understood why. Why, when it came to me, that she
aw,
was not very affectionate, and the affection that I was shown was quite different from my biological father and my sister. And then, as you said, mentally, there was the disconnection when I yearned for her to just validate me, just let me know that she cared that I'm, I'm her child and she loved me, or said it.
right.
The emotional was, also down the line, down in my life with the getting through the rejection and abandonment. I was separated from them, from both of them. My dad dropped me off to my paternal mother. So I stayed with them, with my biological mother and father and my older sister up until I was 5. So the emotional was very, very hard to
Hmm.
go through.
As a young child, oh my goodness, and I'm sure you will address this during this interview, the emotional scars have to
Yes,
heal as well as the
right.
pain and the rejection and all those things. Why don't you address that a little bit? Like way back, in those days, because there are so many children who are going through very similar things now, how you were coping with it, even at that young age.
Best way I can tell you of me personally that I was coping with it was with my adopted parents. They were doing their best, even though they wasn't trained and educated back in that era, in the 70s. I'm a 70s baby. They found it. They formed a foundation of spirituality, of prayer, of God, of scriptures, and that really, you know, changed and helped me coping and they modeled it. It wasn't that they lived it, but well, they said it and they taught me, but they also modeled teamwork. They modeled affection. They modeled
Mm.
where I did never hear them have a chaotic argument from what I had came from. Yeah, they disagreed. It wasn't a perfect, marriage, but it wasn't chaotic. It wasn't cursing. It wasn't hollering. It wasn't, um, physical abuse that I had seen between my biological mother and father. So it was quite different, but they modeled it. They modeled it, and they also started the foundation of teaching me and modeling the love of Christ.
Now, were you aware of the people who became your adoptive parents, or was this just a shock to you? How did that transpire?
I was aware that she was a relative, but I had never stayed overnight with them that I knew of until that one night that I was around 5, and my biological father and mother got in a really bad physical altercation. It was one of the traumatic experiences of my life. Not that I had never seen that happen before, but this was one of the worst that
Aw.
we noticed. My sister and I was with them, and he was driving, and he took all of us over to my grandparents' house, which is her mother and father, and they were still arguing, and he with the exchange of words, ended up taking me out of, everyone else to my aunt, which is his sister. So that was my paternal aunt, which is his sister, home to her and her husband. And he, said that he was quite upset. Like I said, all this transpired with this big falling out, this big argument. And he was quite upset. And we never said a word riding, I remember. But I remember him saying, when he dropped me off and just before he's leaving, I'm looking at him wondering, what's going to happen. And he said, I'll be back. But I ended up, that was where I stayed.
That's so interesting. And did you feel safe there?
Yes and no. It was more confusing,
Right. Okay.
but it was something just was wired within. You know how they say children are very resilient, and
Right.
it was just something within. Even with being in a room, they showed me the room. It was a very nice, made up room. I remember I was afraid to tell them not to cut off the light, that I was afraid of the dark, but
Mm.
um, I remember just feeling like, even with the confusion, I was going to be okay. Some kind of way, there was something within my spirit, and I just believe it was just God reassuring me at that time, being little, that I was going to be okay.
Did you have to come to a place, or was it automatic that you forgave them for doing this?
I believe I could just answer it. It was a process, not so much of forgiving, for letting go and accepting that this has happened and it
Okay.
wasn't my fault.
Before we go any further in your story, is there anything that you could share, possibly with someone who has gone through what you went through as a child, and, to encourage them, they too can become successful and move forward from that pain?
It was years of me feeling responsible for the actions that these individuals took. And
Good
I would
point.
first say
Hmm.
that that would be one thing that I would really encourage and suggest that people would understand. It's not your responsibility of how another individual treats you or behave or take action. It's your actions and your behaviors is the only thing that you're responsible for. So that will lift a lot of guilt and shame and burden. And then the next thing would be that once I took clear of the responsibility of things that had happened from other people, I had to also accept that those things had happened. I freed myself because
Hmm.
not that I didn't accept them years ago. I just felt like, okay, yeah, it happened and it wasn't that bad until I really freed myself and said, some of these experiences was very horrible, was very sad, was very much wrong. you know, Not
Exactly.
trying to put a
Yes,
right
yes.
into the wrong. and then and then on top of that, Carol, I had to accept strangely that it wasn't normal. It
Oh, that's
wasn't
a
a
good point. Yes.
normal foundation or a normal beginning. And that really released me.
Good.
Yes.
I think that's
So
a
I
really good
yes.
point. And I think that's maybe where people then try to think, what could I have done? What
Mhm.
you're saying is probably nothing
Nothing. Yes.
because it
Right.
happened to them.
Yes.
And you have to, when you realize that and that you were a victim, but you didn't stay there.
Right.
And that is the bottom line. Now,
Right.
you also experienced PTSD. Were you diagnosed? And share a little bit about that and how you coped with that.
Said in the 70s, I was actually misdiagnosed from PTSD to mild retardation. I couldn't.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
explain that.
As my adopted mom said, she would say these two words: I was timid and frail. Bless her
Okay.
heart. But I was very withdrawn, shocked, and academically, I could not retain information. I just you
Mm,
could a book called Izzy I read for 6 years. Um, I could get to a certain number, and then the very next day, I couldn't get back to that number. And so the testing back then had they had academically they said that I was mild. I went on the bracket of mild retardation, that I would never read or write effectively.
oh, my word.
And so what was really going on was mentally that traumatic fight that left me separated from my sister and from my biological mother, whom I did not want to leave, no matter how she was treating me. She was all I knew.
Right.
I just couldn't understand why she didn't love me back. And then my father, who said that he would come back and get me and never did. And when he did show up, it was as if he's building the relationship with my aunt, my biological aunt, his sister, and keeping her abreast about his life and their continuing
Okay.
marriage.
Right,
And
right.
it, yeah, yeah. So that
Wasn't
left
about you at any point, in other words.
exactly. It was almost like, did he get amnesia that I was his child? And so I'm going through a mental breakdown of really where do I fit in this equation? But I was never diagnosed, but it was definitely PTSD.
Now, you made a statement on your website that I'm going to read, and then maybe you could expound a little bit on it. And that said, I had to find self love and acceptance
Yes,
within in order to heal from my trauma. It is
yes,
about accepting and embracing that which is beyond our control because we still have a long road ahead and so much more to look forward to. That addresses your attitude, right? So just
yes.
expound a little bit on that.
I had to go through the process, really accept me of how I was created and what I was created for. And that was to love and to be loved. Um,
Mm,
I had to really stop worrying about or trying to get validation from everyone else and just love me.
excellent point.
Yeah.
That's right. And you could talk about that for a month of Sundays probably, right?
Right.
What we're going to do now, we're going to take a short 30-second break, and when we come
Okay.
back, we're going to talk about what we can do as far as some of the hidden insights that you have regarding not only this subject, also as a mental health advocate, and your book, which I know the listeners are going to want to order. So we will be right back.
Right.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Thank you so much, Kim, for what you have shared already. And I know that you are touching many hearts of not just women, but men too, who have an early childhood abuse situation or have not felt loved or have been abandoned or any number of those things, which we all need as, oh my goodness, young children, and so many are not getting it. And yet you can come out the other side and be strong and motivated and a real benefit to society. So, my question to you now is, what are some of the insights into reality that lay hidden beneath the surface of our society?
I'm at the stage in my life transparency at its best. I continue to say that because unless I get to a point in my life that I'm free to be transparent and to
Mm,
accept what I have been through and continue to go through and expose that with truth, that it helps my healing. It continues to help me grow. I really believe that we're getting a little better, but we got still some road to go with the judgmental and for people to be shameful and to feel like they need to hide um, and not be open about experiences and life challenges that happens.
you made a very good point because I think many, including myself, for years hid my past
Hmm.
because you are in fear of maybe how people will look at you or
Hmm.
think less of you because of what you experienced. It had nothing to do with you.
Right.
Or you don't understand how your story could possibly help someone else, when in reality, it's the stories that do help others because then they realize that I'm not alone in this. Somebody
Right.
else went through this, and she's not there, and he's not there anymore. They
Exactly.
have overcome whatever, the problems were in whatever area. Abuse, of course, is a major one. So the message that I'm hearing from you is to not play the victim card, but
Hmm.
to play the victor card. Because even
Right.
though you went through this, that's not what, well, it did make you into who you are, but it's not where you stayed. And that's a strong message that everybody needs to hear and appreciate that we don't have to be those victims to our own circumstances. Do you want
Yes.
to maybe expound a little bit more on that?
Yes. Like you said, I had to be very transparent and to accept my first sexual experiences was in my adopted family's home, and it wasn't my fault, and I believe they didn't intentionally have for the experience to happen underneath their roof to hurt me. God knows, I
Mm-hmm.
know they wouldn't, but it happened, and with me accepting that it happened and being transparent, it really allowed me to reinvest in myself and
Mm.
heal the wounds of the first um, sexual experience. Intimacy and sex is created to be beautiful. To turn it around for my good, for my favor, and I just chose and I said I refuse to live in the bondage of the way my my introduction my sexual introduction was has happened. And as you said, I'm not going to be a victim to this. I'm go- I'm going to be a victorious. I'm going to claim victory over this situation. So I'm going to start loving myself. I'm going to invest in myself.
Good,
I'm going to
good.
accept that that was a broken foundation, but it is created to be enjoyed, and I'm going to enjoy
Wow, that was a mouthful. That was wonderful. Absolutely. And I think more people need to hear that than not. That is because this is one thing one experience that many people, especially women, will hide behind
it. Hmm.
and afraid to come out and say, this happened to me. But I am not going to allow it to make me bitter
Hmm.
or shamed or guilty or anything else. So,
Right.
yes, that was so well stated. I thank you. You recently had an experience in your life that you shared with me off record, and I would really appreciate if you could share that with our audience. It's regarding the area of forgiveness, and I believe it impacts a powerful message. So, do you know what I'm talking about? And would you share that, Kim?
Yes, I do. Well, yeah. Okay. So I don't mind sharing. Hopefully, this will help someone. Yes. So as I was saying to you before, I had to start, and I've been building, investing in myself, and loving myself, and taking that same encouragement and applying it to my life about not being responsible for anyone else's actions or behavior, or what how they treat me or what they do, but it's how I act and what I do and how I respond. So that's all I can control and be responsible for. So I just lost my adopted mother, who raised me, my paternal aunt, her husband, which is my dad, the daddy Bill, the one that named me Kimmy. That's how I got the word epitome of Kimmy. He passed away in 97, so she's the last of the earthly parents that I had on earth. Um, she passed away about 2 weeks ago, and her memorial was last Monday. And since her brother slash one of the one of the siblings that she pretty much raised let me and my children know that he was in charge of everything. Exit me pretty much out of the funeral. I had no say in the funeral. I had no nothing in the program for me to do or say. He said that everything was written down. I still hadn't seen what was written down, and that everything was already taken care of. So I just showed up at the funeral. Once I found out through a text message when it was, and where the memorial service was going to be. My children and I seen how we were listed in the program, which they were listed as her nieces and not grandchildren. And I'm just looking, but also as I'm looking at the program, my birth mother is on the program as the one to read the obituary. As I'm grieving and getting ready for her service, her memorial service, I had, since I'm such a writer, I had wrote a tribute to her that I'm going to post on my website. And I had already had in mind that one of my children was going to, one of my adult children was going to read it for me. Well, it just so happened with none of us being in the program, I ended up having to give it to my birth mother to read that tribute. And this is what I'm saying is how I was able to leave that funeral in a peace, that I was loved by my mother that raised me, and I was raised very well to become the woman that I am. Sorry, and having the love of all of my children there with their support, and being able to be still together and well, and not in such a chaotic depression anxiety way that I had lived years of feeling and being. That moment was like an epitome of me choosing to invest in Kim and to accept and embrace it all and to give it back to someone else that need to hear this.
So beautifully stated, and thank you so much for sharing that. That really touched my heart. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Now, you are a mental health advocate, you said in your post, so tell us about that.
Well, yes, along with prayer, along with my constant um, building, my consistent building relationship with God, um, in my way, and that's through meditation, through prayer, through. I love all types of music, but I also have a music list with hymns, with spiritual songs, with inspirational songs, and whatnot. But I also have found, and I continue to utilize that is to utilize mental health services. I through the process of writing my book and reliving. I had a therapist that I spoke to about 3 or 4 times during the time of writing my book, and she didn't even know that I was writing my book. Matter of fact, there was an assignment that she wanted me to do that I chose not to do because I had already had did it, and that was to write a letter to my birth mom. But at the same time, she didn't know that our sessions of me reliving, some of the experiences that I went through, that I was in the process of writing writing it down in a book and releasing it as well. As I was releasing it and vetting to her, I was also releasing it to as I was writing it down. And I found throughout my life, as I look back, I used to, even at a very young age, my first marriage, write in journals. And I
Hmm.
found that was a part of my coping tools, as you were saying,
Right.
as releasing. Yeah. hmm
Now, your book, is it written as a memoir, a story, a novel? Is it written as a self-help? Tell us about your book.
Yes, it is. It is. It's written as a memoir. It's starting with what we just talked about earlier in our conversation. My foundation from the very beginning of the life that I remember, my truth, and up until quite recently now. So I wanted to have my first book as a memoir of experiences and to start from the beginning and to leave where I'm at now to inspire and to provide hope to anyone that has been through something similar or know someone that has been through something similar.
That's wonderful. And your book, all the links will be available on the notes from this broadcast. And anything you would like to share in summary as a word of encouragement to our listeners.
I would say the best gift that I could give to myself, and it happened down in a later year of my life, in a season that I am such a proud mom of 4 adult children,
Hmm.
one minor, 6 grandchildren, and I'm just loving the season of my life. But I had to choose to invest in myself. I had to choose. The best gift that I could give myself is just to choose me. For one time in my life, to choose me, to love me. And once I did that, I left the rest to God's hands to attract for those around me, family, friends, or whoever that wanted to be a part of my life, to see the love that I have for myself. That way they would know how to love me.
Well, I love that line. I think it's a bumper sticker. It said, when you said choose to invest in yourself, and that can be in so many different areas. And
Yes,
that's it in a nutshell. Well,
yes.
thank you so much, Kim, for what you shared today, for your encouragement to those who could be hurting or who are dealing with past hurts. And also, I definitely recommend that each of our listeners take a look at your book follow you on your website and your social media links, which will all be posted. And I want to thank you so much, Kim, for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you, Miss Carol, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.